Welcome to Galactic Nova Stories, where cosmic emotions come to life. Your journey begins now. The storm had been raging for 3 days when Mark Reed found her. Lightning split the purple-black sky of New Haven Colony as he secured the last panel on his greenhouse, the wind nearly tearing it from his grip. That was when he spotted a crumpled form at the edge of his property, half hidden among the bioluminescent shrubs he'd cultivated as boundary markers. "Hello?" Mark called, his voice lost in the howling gale. He approached cautiously, rain pelting his environmental suit. The colony warnings echoed in his mind. Unauthorized contact with non-human sentience is strictly prohibited. But something about the way the figure lay there, vulnerable and still, overrode his caution. It was unmistakably female, though not human. Her skin had an iridescent quality that seemed to pulse weakly with inner light. Nearly 7 feet tall, her limbs were unnaturally slender, with joints that bent in slightly wrong directions. Her face, though alien with its large, pupilless eyes and small mouth, somehow conveyed unmistakable pain. "Can you understand me?" Mark asked, kneeling beside her. She made a sound like crystal chimes in wind, then winced. A dark, violet fluid seeped from a gash along her side. Mark had never seen a luminari up close before, only in government briefings that painted them as potential threats despite the peace treaty. The colony would expect him to report her, but the nearest patrol was hours away. By then, in this weather, with that wound, Mark made his decision. "I'm going to help you," he said, knowing she couldn't understand. "My home is nearby." The luminari's eyes widened as Mark carefully lifted her. She was surprisingly light, her body temperature cool against him. As he carried her through the storm toward his modular habitat, she emitted another chime-like sound and went limp. Inside, Mark laid her on his medical cot, activating the diagnostic scanner above it. The machine hummed, confused by her alien physiology, before displaying unknown biological entity, unable to provide standard treatment protocols. "Great," Mark muttered. 5 years as a colonial botanist hadn't prepared him for alien first aid. He cleaned her wound with purified water, noting how her skin seemed to absorb the liquid directly. When he applied a standard medical seal, it adhered poorly to her unusual epidermis. Mark improvised using the flexible plant-based bandaging he'd developed for his more delicate specimens. Throughout the night, as the storm raged outside, Mark monitored her breathing, slower than human rhythm but steady. Her skin's luminescence fluctuated, sometimes brightening momentarily before dimming again. By morning, when weak sunlight filtered through the habitat's windows, her iridescence strengthened noticeably. Mark moved her cot beneath the largest window, allowing maximum light exposure. Within minutes, her breathing deepened, and the wound's edges began visibly knitting together. "Photosynthetic healing," Mark whispered, fascinated. "You're literally feeding on light." When her eyes finally opened, they swirled with colors that hadn't been there before. Blues, violets, and golds moving in hypnotic patterns. She stared at Mark for several long moments before raising a 6-fingered hand toward his face, stopping just short of touching him. "Herman," she said, the sound awkward from her small mouth. Mark's heart nearly stopped. "You speak English?" "Learn more quickly," she replied, her voice like wind through crystal. "Name?" "I'm Mark," he said, still astonished. "Mark Reed." She placed her hand over her chest. "Ilara." Outside, the storm finally broke and sunlight flooded the room. As the light touched her, Ilara's skin blazed with brilliance that momentarily blinded Mark. When his vision cleared, she was sitting upright, her wound noticeably smaller. Mark Reed, colonial botanist and lifelong loner, had no idea this moment would irrevocably change both their worlds. By the 3rd day, Ilara could form complete sentences. Mark marveled at her species' linguistic capabilities as she rapidly absorbed vocabulary from his habitat's small library of physical books, objects that fascinated her endlessly. "You're written." "A language is inefficient," she observed, running 6 fingers along a page of his botanical journal, yet beautiful in its permanence. Mark watched her from his workstation, where he monitored the growth patterns of his experimental crops. "How does your species record information?" Ilara's skin pulsed with bands of blue light that traveled from her shoulders to her fingertips. We share memory through light patterns. Our history lives within us, passed through generations. When Mark prepared his evening meal, Ilara studied his actions with scholarly intensity. Her own sustenance came primarily from bathing in sunlight, though the perpetually overcast skies of New Haven had left her dangerously weakened before Mark found her. "My people call themselves Luminari," she explained as Mark ate. "We evolved. On a planet with 3 suns, our bodies store light energy directly. Is that why you were so weak during the storm?" Mark asked. Ilara nodded, her movements graceful despite her alien proportions. "Without light, we starve. Your colony world has insufficient sunlight for long-term survival. I was desperate when my ship malfunctioned." "You crashed here?" Mark hadn't heard reports of any crashes. Emergency landing 5 days ago in the northern mountains. Her colors darkened to deep blues. "The others on my transport as did not survive." Mark set down his fork. "There are more Luminari coming?" "No." Ilara's skin dimmed further. "We are refugees. Our home system is consumed by war with the Voidborn, those who could escape, scattered across the galaxy." Mark's comm unit buzzed with the daily colony broadcast. "Reminder, all encounters with non-human entities must be reported immediately to colonial security. Failure to report is punishable by exile." He switched it off, aware of Ilara watching him intently. "Your people fear outsiders," she observed. "With reason," Mark replied. "First contact with the Arcturian Alliance went badly for Earth. We lost millions before the treaty." "Yet you helped me." Mark studied his hands. "I'm a botanist. I observe what things need to thrive, not what regulations say they deserve." That evening, Mark rigged additional lighting in his habitat, arranging full-spectrum lamps around Ilara's cot. Within hours, her iridescence strengthened, and by morning her wound had completely healed. She stood at her full height for the first time, her head nearly brushing the ceiling, and displayed her gratitude through an intricate dance of light. Beneath her skin, pulsing in patterns that somehow conveyed profound emotion despite their alienness. "In my culture," she explained, "to share light is to share life." Mark's botanical training had taught him that all living things seek conditions to flourish. Perhaps humans and Luminari weren't so different in their fundamental needs. When Ilara examined his greenhouse, she pointed out imperceptible flaws in his irrigation system that had puzzled him for months. "Your plants speak through chemical signatures," she explained. "My people evolved alongside similar symbiotic flora. We can sense their needs." Mark watched in astonishment as she adjusted the nutrient flow by mere fractions, her fingers dancing over control panels with precision his human hands couldn't match. "On your world," he asked, "were you a scientist too?" Ilara's colors shifted to a contemplative violet. "I was a keeper of histories, but all Luminari learn botanical science from childhood. Plants and light are our most sacred connection." That night, while Ilara absorbed energy from his lamps, Mark made a decision. He would not report her presence. Whatever consequences came, he couldn't surrender someone who had already lost so much to bureaucratic fears. Outside, through the habitat windows, the first stars appeared as the clouds finally cleared. Mark noticed how Ilara's gaze fixed longingly on their distant light, and he wondered if she would ever feel at home on this cloudy world so far from her 3 suns. The colony security skimmer appeared on Mark's horizon precisely at midday, when the weak sun of New Haven reached its apex. Through his greenhouse windows, he watched the vehicles approach with growing dread. "Someone reported seeing lights," he told Ilara, who immediately dimmed her natural luminescence to near darkness. "Unusual lights last night." "Your neighbors," she said. It wasn't a question, Mark nodded. His nearest neighbor, Chen, had visited yesterday to trade plant specimens. Though Mark had kept Ilara hidden, the habitat's unusual lighting configuration would have been visible through the windows. "Will they take me?" Ilara asked, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her rapidly shifting skin tones. Mark remembered the rumors about other alien visitors who had been taken for diplomatic processing and never seen again. The colony leadership maintained strict isolation policies, regardless of official Earth treaties. Not if I can help it, Mark said. There's a storage compartment beneath the floor. It was designed for protecting sensitive specimens during storms. The skimmer was close enough now that Mark could see 3 security officers inside. He hurried Ilara to the hidden compartment, a narrow space barely large enough for her tall frame. I must dim completely, she whispered. Without light, I enter dormancy. If I remain aware, my skin will betray me. Mark understood the risk she was taking, voluntarily entering a state akin to starvation. How long can you safely remain dormant? 6 hours, perhaps 8. Her skin pulsed once with vivid blue light, a luminary gesture of trust, she had told him, before she closed her eyes and her luminescence faded completely. Mark sealed the compartment just as the skimmer landed outside. The lead officer, Commander, Walsh didn't bother with pleasantries. We've received reports of unusual light patterns from your habitat, Reed, patterns consistent with known luminary communication. I've been experimenting with spectrum modification for my night blooming specimens. Mark gestured to his greenhouse. Would you like to see my research? Walsh's eyes narrowed. Our sensors detected non-human biological traces near your property 3 days ago. Probably residual signatures from my xenobotanical samples. I have proper permits. Mark kept his voice casual, though his heart hammered against his ribs. The junior officers conducted a cursory search while Walsh questioned Mark about his recent activities. They scanned for heat signatures but found nothing unusual. Ilara's dormant state left her body temperature nearly ambient. Your neighbor mentioned increased power consumption, Walsh said. Care to explain? Growth acceleration experiments, Mark replied. I've been testing whether modified light cycles can increase crop yields. Walsh didn't look convinced, but had nothing concrete to justify a more invasive search. After 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours, the officers departed with a warning. Colonial resources are stretched thin, Reed. Housing unauthorized aliens diverts precious supplies from human needs. Only when the skimmer disappeared over the horizon did Mark release the breath he'd been holding. He rushed to open the compartment, anxiety spiking when he saw Ilara's still form, her skin dull and lifeless without its characteristic glow. He carried her to the greenhouse, positioning her beneath the strongest growing lights. For agonizing minutes nothing happened. Then gradually, pinpoints of light appeared beneath her skin, spreading slowly across her body like stars emerging at dusk. Her eyes opened, swirling with muted colors. They have gone? Yes, Mark said, relief flooding through him. But they'll be watching. We need to be more careful. That evening, Mark reconfigured his habitat's power system to mask their energy usage and installed additional shielding around the windows. As he worked, Ilara studied colonial maps on his data tablet. There are caves in these mountains, she said, pointing to a region north of the settlement. My people can absorb geothermal energy in emergencies. If I become a danger to you— No, Mark interrupted. Running isn't the answer. Ilara's skin shimmered with uncertainty. Your people would exile you for helping me. Mark thought about his life before finding Ilara. The solitude, the quiet work with his plants, the minimum required social interaction with other colonists. He had never quite fit within human society. Perhaps that's why her presence felt so natural, so right. They would have to catch us first, he said with a determination that surprised him. And I know this terrain better than any security officer. Outside, New Haven's artificial night cycle began, lights dimming across the distant colony center. In the sudden darkness, Ilara's gentle glow illuminated Mark's habitat with shifting patterns that seemed, to his human eyes, almost like hope. Weeks passed, and the greenhouse flourished under their combined attention. Mark's experimental crops grew with unprecedented vigor, benefiting from techniques no human botanist had ever considered. Your people cultivate from outside inward, Ilara explained as they tended seedlings together. Mine learned to communicate with plants, encouraging growth from within. She demonstrated by cupping her luminescent hands around a struggling moonfruit sapling. Her skin pulsed with gentle rhythms, and within minutes, the plant's wilting leaves strengthened. You're actually transferring energy to it, Mark observed, scanning the plant with his tablet. That's remarkable. A simple symbiosis, she replied. On my world, plants provide shelter and supplemental nutrients. We provide light enhancement during dark seasons. Mark's botanical journals filled with observations of her techniques. Together, they developed hybrid approaches that combined human horticultural science with luminary energy cultivation. The results were spectacular. Plants that grew faster, produced more oxygen, required less water, and yielded more nutritional value than standard colony crops. In the evenings after work, they shared stories of their worlds. Mark described Earth's oceans and mountains, its crowded cities and empty wilderness. Ilara spoke of her homeworld's 3 suns, creating complex seasons as they moved through different alignments, and the massive crystalline forests that amplified and refracted their light. Our oldest trees stood 20 times my height, she said, her skin projecting subtle light patterns that somehow enhanced her words, conveying emotions human language couldn't capture. Their trunks were transparent near the core, channeling light to underground fungal networks. I would have loved to study them, Mark said. You would have been welcomed among my clan, Ilara replied softly. We valued knowledge seekers above all others. Mark had never spoken so freely with another being. His colleagues in the colony respected his work, but found his passion for plants excessive, his preference for solitude strange. With Ilara, conversation flowed naturally, their different perspectives creating harmony rather than discord. One evening, as New Haven's artificial sunset painted the sky in shades of amber, they sat on the habitat's small observation deck. Mark had recently expanded the greenhouse, adding specialized chambers where Ilara could safely absorb sunlight without fear of being spotted by passing skimmers. I've been thinking, Mark said, watching how the fading light played across her iridescent features. Your knowledge could revolutionize our colony's agricultural system. New Haven struggles with food production. Your techniques could change everything. Ilara's colors shifted to thoughtful blues. Revealing my existence would endanger us both. Not necessarily, if we present it as collaborative research, if they see the value you bring. Your colony leaders view aliens as threats, not collaborators. People fear what they don't understand, Mark countered, but hunger is a universal language. If we could show them... Their conversation halted as Mark's emergency comm unit crackled to life, a colony-wide broadcast interrupting all communications. Attention all sectors. Blight detected in Agricultural Quadrant 7. Preliminary analysis. Indicates rapid spread potential. All botanical specialists report for emergency consultation. Mark's blood ran cold. Quadrant 7 housed the colony's primary grain production. A serious blight could threaten their entire food supply. Ilara placed her 6-fingered hand gently on his arm, her touch cool and soothing. Your people need help. If I go, you'll be alone. If they search properties while I'm gone... Some risks. Unnecessary, she said, her skin pulsing with determined amber light. Besides, I believe I know this blight. The pattern of spread matches one my people encountered centuries ago. Mark stared at her. You could help? Perhaps. But first, you must go, alone, and learn exactly what they face. As Mark prepared to leave for the colony center, Ilara pressed something into his hand, a small crystal that glowed faintly with stored light. A memory stone, she explained. It contains botanical knowledge from my world. Study it when you're alone. That night, as Mark joined the emergency response team, the crystal hidden safely in his pocket, he realized how completely Ilara had transformed his life. What had begun as an act of compassion toward a starving alien had evolved into something he had no words for, a connection that transcended their biological differences. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The colony's situation was more dire than Mark had imagined. The blight moved with frightening speed, destroying 70% of crops in affected fields within days. Under microscopic examination, the fungal spores revealed an adaptive quality that neutralized standard treatments almost immediately. It's evolving faster than we can respond, Chief Agronomist Patel explained to the assembled specialists. At current progression rates, our food reserves will be depleted within 2 months. Mark studied the cellular breakdown displayed on the lab's main screen. The pattern seemed familiar somehow, similar to something he'd seen in Ilara's memory. Crystal. That night, alone in his temporary quarters at the colony center, he activated the alien device. Light patterns danced before his eyes, conveying information in ways human language couldn't capture. He saw generations of luminary botanical knowledge compressed into minutes, including details of a remarkably similar blight that had once threatened their world. The solution, Mark realized with growing excitement, involved not killing the fungus, but redirecting its growth cycle through specific light frequencies that triggered premature sporulation. The luminary had discovered that certain wavelengths could essentially trick the organism into completing its life cycle before it caused significant damage. When Mark presented this approach at the next morning's briefing, skepticism was immediate. Light therapy against a fungal blight? Patel's disbelief was evident. Based on what research? Theoretical models I've been developing, Mark answered carefully. My recent experiments with spectrum modification suggest certain wavelengths can trigger genetic expressions in simple organisms. We need proven solutions, Reed, not theories. Let me demonstrate on a controlled sample, Mark insisted. Give me 24 hours. Reluctantly, they provided him with sealed samples of infected plant tissue. Mark worked through the night, modifying standard growth lamps to produce the specific frequencies the memory crystal had shown him. By morning, his samples showed remarkable improvement. The blight's progression had not just stopped but reversed. The success earned him permission to test his approach on a small infected field. Within 3 days, that field showed 90% recovery, while neighboring areas continued deteriorating. This is unprecedented, Patel admitted, examining the rejuvenated crops. How did you develop this technique so quickly? Mark knew. The moment of truth had arrived. The colony needed Ilara's knowledge to survive, which meant revealing her existence. I didn't develop it alone, he said quietly. I had help from someone with specialized experience with similar blights. Patel's expression hardened. What are you saying, Reed? I'm saying that if you want to save the colony, you need to meet my research partner. The meeting with colony administrator Bennett occurred in a secured conference room. Mark explained everything, finding Ilara during the storm, learning about luminary botanical science, their collaborative work. You've been harboring an undocumented alien for nearly 2 months, Bennett said, her voice cold, during a resource crisis. An alien whose knowledge can save us from starvation, Mark countered. If what you're saying about this light therapy is true, and that's still being verified, we can implement it without the alien's continued presence. No, you can't, Mark insisted. The blight is adaptive. What works today will need modification tomorrow as it evolves. Clara understands the underlying principles in ways I'm still learning. Bennett studied him with narrowed eyes. You've grown attached to this creature. I've grown to respect her knowledge and her character, Mark corrected, and she has chosen to help us despite how your security forces would have treated her if they'd found her first. After hours of debate, a compromise was reached. Ilara would be permitted to work with the agricultural team under strict supervision. She would be granted temporary resident status, but confined to the agricultural quadrant and Mark's habitat. When Mark returned home and explained the situation, Ilara's skin rippled with complex emotions, relief mingled with apprehension. They will watch me constantly, she said. Yes, Mark acknowledged, but they'll also see what I've seen, how much we can learn from each other. The following morning, when Ilara walked into the colony's main agricultural lab beside Mark, the human scientists stared in undisguised wonder at her tall, luminescent form. Her skin pulsed with nervous light patterns, but her voice remained steady as she began explaining the blight's life cycle in perfect English. By day's end, even the most skeptical colonists recognized the depth of her knowledge. Within a week, modified light emitters based on her designs were deployed across all agricultural quadrants. The blight's progression halted, then reversed. For the first time since her arrival, Ilara walked openly under New Haven's sky, her presence acknowledged, if not yet fully accepted. As they left the lab after another long day of work, She turned her swirling eyes toward Mark. "Your people are beginning to see me," she said simply. Mark nodded, understanding the profound truth in her words. To be seen, truly seen for what? You are not what others fear you might be, was perhaps the most fundamental need of any sentient being. "The aliens' techniques have saved approximately 80% of our crops," Chief Agronomist Patel reported to the Colony Council. "Recovery is proceeding faster than our most optimistic projections." 3 weeks had passed since Ilara began, working openly with the agricultural team. Mark watched from the back of the council chamber as Administrator Bennett studied the production charts with grudging approval. "And what does the alien want in return?" Councillor Diaz asked, voicing the suspicion many still harbored. "Her name is Ilara," Mark said, stepping forward. "And she hasn't asked for anything except basic supplies and permission to continue our research." Bennett's eyes narrowed. "No species acts without self-interest, Reed." "Perhaps understanding self-interest differently isn't the same as not having it," Mark countered. "Luminary culture values knowledge exchange above material gain. For Ilara, contributing to our botanical science is reward enough." The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued that Ilara represented an unprecedented opportunity for scientific advancement. Others maintained that alien integration violated colony charter principles designed to protect human autonomy. Throughout the discussion, Mark noticed a subtle shift in terminology, from the alien to Ilara, or the luminary. It was a small change but significant. Names humanized, labels distanced. Finally, Administrator Bennett called for a decision. By narrow margin, the council voted to extend Ilara's residency permit indefinitely and expand her access to colony facilities, with monitoring protocols remaining in place. "Your council's fear is understandable," Ilara told Mark afterward as they walked through the recovering fields. "My people once had similar reactions to outside species." "What changed?" Mark asked. "We learned that isolation breeds stagnation." Her skin rippled with thoughtful blues. "The greatest advances in luminary history came after we began exchanging knowledge with the Silvani water dwellers." As they inspected the grain fields, Mark was struck by how the colonists they passed now acknowledged Ilara, some with cautious nods, others with open curiosity. The change had begun with the agricultural workers who witnessed her expertise, firsthand and spread gradually outward. That evening, Mark received an unexpected visitor at his habitat. Administrator Bennett arrived unannounced, her official skimmer parked at a discreet distance. "I wanted to see your operation for myself," she explained, examining the hybrid plants in Mark's greenhouse, without the formal trappings of council. Business. Ilara demonstrated how she had modified standard hydroponic systems using principles from her world, creating more efficient nutrient cycling. She showed how certain plants responded to specific light frequencies by accelerating growth, or increasing nutritional density. "This combination of human engineering with luminary light science," Bennett observed, "it's creating something neither of our species developed independently." "Symbiosis," Mark said. "The whole becomes greater than its parts." Bennett studied Ilara thoughtfully. "Our colony was founded on principles of human self-sufficiency. Many believe that was our strength. Perhaps true strength comes from recognizing beneficial partnerships," Ilara suggested, her voice gentle. "On my world, no species thrived in isolation." After Bennett departed, Mark sensed a fundamental shift had occurred. The administrator had come seeking reassurance about safety. She had left contemplating possibility. The following week brought astonishing news. A distress beacon activated in the northern mountains, identical to the one from Ilara's crashed ship. A survey team discovered 3 surviving luminari who had been hiding in geothermal caves, subsisting on minimal energy for months. Colony leadership faced an unprecedented decision. What to do with multiple alien refugees? Mark expected resistance, perhaps even a reversal of Ilara's status. Instead, Administrator Bennett made a surprising announcement. The luminary survivors will be granted the same conditional residency as their compatriot, pending council approval. Their botanical expertise may prove valuable, as we expand agricultural operations. The change wasn't universal. Some colonists protested the alien presence, arguing that human needs should take priority during resource allocation. But when the new luminari helped establish more efficient energy systems using principles from their world, even the staunchest opposition quieted. 6 months after Mark found Ilara collapsed in the storm, New Haven Colony hosted an unprecedented event, a formal knowledge exchange council where humans and luminari shared research openly. Mark watched with pride as Ilara presented their hybrid growing techniques to an audience that included representatives from 3 other Earth colonies. Today marks the beginning of a new approach to interspecies relations, Administrator Bennett announced. One based not on fear or isolation, but on mutual benefit through cultural and scientific exchange. That night, as they walked home beneath New Haven's artificially brightened evening sky, adjusted specifically to help the luminari maintain their energy needs, Ilara's skin glowed with a warm, golden light Mark had come to recognize as contentment. When my ship crashed, she said softly, I believed I had lost everything, my world, my clan, my future. I never imagined finding a new home among humans. Mark took her 6-fingered hand in his 5-fingered one, marveling at how natural the gesture now felt. Sometimes, he said, what we think is an ending is just an unexpected beginning. 1 year after Ilara's arrival, New Haven Colony had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The agricultural quadrant now produced surplus crops using hybrid human luminary techniques. Energy consumption had decreased 20% through efficiency systems designed by the luminary engineers, while light distribution had been optimized throughout the colony to support both species' needs. More significantly, cultural exchange flourished. Mark established a botanical research center where scientists from both species collaborated openly. Young colonists eagerly studied luminary language and light communication patterns, while the luminari immersed themselves in human art, music, and literature. Your Shakespeare captures emotional complexity. Our light language sometimes cannot express, Ilara told Mark one evening as they finished reading Hamlet together. While our mathematical precision helps clarify your scientific theories, their personal relationship had evolved alongside these cultural developments. What began as caregiver and refugee, then research partners, had blossomed into something more profound. They had created a unique communication style, Mark learning to read the subtle meanings in Ilara's light patterns while she grew increasingly adept at interpreting human facial expressions and body language. Administrator Bennett wants us to represent New Haven at the Intercolonial Conference next month, Mark said, scrolling through his message terminal, to discuss our innovative approach to interspecies cooperation. Ilara's skin shimmered with pleased violet tones. Some might still object to showcasing alien integration, former Administrator Bennett, Mark corrected with a smile. Interim Administrator Patel seems quite enthusiastic about our participation. The leadership change had come peacefully 3 months earlier, when Bennett accepted a position coordinating interspecies relations across multiple Earth colonies, a department that hadn't existed before New Haven's success story spread. That evening, they strolled through the colony's central plaza, where a newly established light garden combined human horticultural techniques with luminary energy principles. Bioluminescent plants from both worlds created stunning displays that changed with the seasons. Children, human children, approached Ilara without fear, fascinated by her gentle glow and willingness to answer endless questions. Why are your fingers longer than ours? Can you make your skin any color you want? Do luminary children play games? Ilara answered each question patiently, demonstrating simple light patterns that human children could mimic with handheld light toys developed collaboratively by engineers from both species. Mark watched with quiet joy, remembering how she had once needed to hide from these same colonists. Later, in the privacy of their shared habitat, expanded now to accommodate both human and luminary living requirements, Mark found himself contemplating their future. The Arcturus treaty negotiations have reopened, he mentioned, referencing the ongoing diplomatic efforts between Earth and the alien alliance that had once threatened humanity. Earth's representatives, are specifically citing New Haven's luminari integration as evidence that peaceful coexistence is possible. From enemies to reluctant neighbors to genuine allies, Ilara mused. The pattern follows ancient wisdom from my world. Light reveals truth slowly but completely. Mark hesitated before voicing the question that had occupied his thoughts recently. Have you considered what happens when more luminary refugees find their way here? Will you want to establish a separate community with them? Ilara's colors shifted to contemplative blue, streaked with warm amber, a pattern Mark recognized as indicating emotional complexity. My people have a concept called soul binding, she said carefully. When two beings develop connections that transcend conventional relationships, it's rare even among luminari, rarer still across species boundaries. She extended her hand, skin glowing with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Mark's heartbeat. I believe what we have built together, this life, this understanding, is something precious and unique, she continued. I have no desire to separate from it. Mark took her offered hand, their fingers intertwining despite their different numbers and proportions, a physical manifestation of their unlikely harmony. What exactly are you saying? He asked, though something in his heart already knew. Among my people, those who recognize soul binding formalize their connection through a unity ceremony, Ilara explained. It's not unlike your concept of marriage, though with fewer legal constraints and more emphasis on compatible energy patterns. Mark felt an unexpected tightness in his throat. Are you proposing to me? Ilara's skin brightened with joyful colors. I believe I am, though I'm not entirely certain of proper human protocols for such requests. Mark laughed, a sound of pure happiness. I think you're doing just fine. That night, as New Haven's artificial stars glimmered above their habitat, they began planning a ceremony that would combine traditions from both worlds, a celebration not just of their personal union, but of the possibility that different species might find harmony across the vast gulfs of space. The news of their intended union spread quickly through New Haven, generating reactions that ranged from enthusiastic support to bewildered concern. Most colonists had grown accustomed to luminary presence, but marriage between species represented an unprecedented step. You understand what this means symbolically, Interim Administrator Patel told them during a private meeting. You'll become representatives of more than just New Haven. Mark nodded. We are prepared for that responsibility. And for the scrutiny, Ilara added, her skin pulsing with determined amber light. They worked together to create a ceremony honoring both traditions. From Earth culture came exchanged vows and rings, though Ilara's was specially designed for her six-fingered hand. From luminary tradition came the binding of light, a ritual where energy patterns were shared between partners in sequences that symbolized their unique connection. As preparation continued, an unexpected communication arrived from Earth Central government. Their union would be officially recognized across all human territories, the first interspecies marriage granted such status. The precedent would have implications far beyond their personal relationship. We've become something of a test case, Mark observed, with a mixture of pride and apprehension. Ilara's colors shifted to thoughtful blue. Perhaps that was inevitable. From the moment you decided to help a starving alien during a storm. 5 years after Mark found Ilara collapsed outside his greenhouse, New Haven Colony hosted the most significant interspecies gathering in human history. Representatives from 7 Earth colonies and 3 non-human civilizations, including a delegation of luminari who had established diplomatic relations with humanity, converged to witness an event that many had once thought impossible. The ceremonial garden, designed with both human aesthetic principles and luminary light harmonics, bloomed with plants from multiple worlds. Crystalline structures captured and refracted sunlight in patterns meaningful to Ilara's people, while traditional earth flowers perfumed the air. Mark stood beside his human family members who had traveled from Earth specifically for this day, his mother, teary-eyed but smiling, his brother, initially skeptical but won over by Ilara's intelligence and kindness during their weeks of preparation. I never imagined my son would marry someone who glows in the dark, his mother had joked the previous evening, "but I've never seen you so happy." The ceremony began as sunlight reached its zenith, important for the luminary portions of the ritual. Mark wore formal attire augmented with light-responsive elements that complemented Ilara's natural luminescence. Ilara had adorned her iridescent skin with intricate patterns that told the story of their meeting and subsequent journey together. Administrator Patel, no longer interim but confirmed by colony vote, officiated, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "We gather today to celebrate not just the union of two individuals, but a new understanding of what connection can mean across the boundaries that once divided us." The ritual progressed with elements from both cultures seamlessly interwoven. They exchanged traditional human vows, then performed the luminary light bonding, where their biorhythms were symbolically synchronized through precisely timed light pulses. When Mark placed a ring on Ilara's six-fingered hand, she reciprocated, with a crystalline band that subtly amplified his natural bodily electricity in ways only luminari could perceive, marking him as family in her people's tradition. "What began as an act of compassion," Patel concluded, "has blossomed into something that reminds us all of our capacity for growth beyond assumed limitations. By the authority vested in me by New Haven Colony and Earth Central Government, I now pronounce you united in marriage." The celebration continued long into the evening, with both species sharing food, music, and stories. Human children danced alongside young luminari, their movements illuminated by bioluminescent plants developed in Mark and Ilara's research center. As twilight deepened, the couple slipped away to a quiet corner of the botanical gardens they had built together. Around them, hybrid plants from their early experiments had matured into a lush ecosystem that symbolized the potential of their collaborative work. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you found me during that storm?" Ilara asked, her skin glowing with contented gold and pink hues. Mark laughed softly. "I was just hoping not to get exiled for harboring an alien fugitive. And now your people use us as an example of successful integration in diplomatic negotiations." It was true. The New Haven model had become a framework for peaceful contact between species throughout explored space. Their botanical research center had expanded into a multidisciplinary institute studying beneficial exchanges between different civilizations. Already, 3 more interspecies couples, inspired by their example, had announced intentions to formalize their relationships. "We've come so far," Mark said, gazing across the colony that had once feared alien contact but now thrived because of it. "From hiding you in a floor compartment to celebrating with representatives from 3 star systems. From starvation to abundance," Ilara added, her fingers intertwining with his. "From isolation to connection." The evening sky above New Haven glowed with enhanced light patterns designed to comfort both humans and luminari, the most visible symbol of their successful coexistence. In the distance, construction continued on the first purpose-built neighborhood designed for both species to live comfortably together. "My people have an ancient saying," Ilara said, her voice like gentle wind chimes in the evening air. "When different lights converge, they create patterns unseen in solitude." Mark smiled, understanding the deeper truth in her words. Humanity had once feared the stars might hold only threats and competitors. Instead, they had found partners and friends, different yet complementary, each species contributing unique perspectives to challenges that affected them all. He looked at Ilara, his colleague, his friend, now his wife, and marveled at how completely one decision had changed everything. A botanist who had preferred plants to people had opened his door to a starving alien woman, never expecting she would illuminate not just his life, but the future of human-alien relations throughout explored space. As night fell completely, their merged shadows stretched across gardens filled with plants that could not have existed without their collaboration, living proof that the most beautiful growth often comes from unexpected connections. Around them, New Haven Colony pulsed with the light of possibility, a beacon in the darkness between stars.